you can. Logan, what a pleasure. Welcome to Spotlight Fridays.
Yeah,
I'm
thank you for having me.
so delighted to have you on. I've been following you on LinkedIn. You're Mr. LinkedIn, that's for sure. You done an amazing job. I've been following you for about, I don't know, we've been friends for about a year on LinkedIn, and this is the first time we're having this conversation. Long time coming. So I'm very excited to have a chat and unpack a few things that you do very well. You never hesitate to actually publicly share your failures in the past, from the past, and I really appreciate that. But today is not about failures because you have a very successful, thriving business, and I would like to speak to you about that. For those people who don't happen to know you, and but follow me and will be able to see this live streaming, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. This is always the worst part, but yeah. So I guess in a nutshell, I've started and built a couple of businesses. My first one went terribly wrong. I write about that a lot. And then in the next business, it went very well. And in that business, I built my team. It was an e-commerce retail business. I built my team in the Philippines, and yeah, and we had some challenges, but we figured out a unique way to find talent, which is something that no one is doing. And as a result of that, when I sold that company in 2024, I started Willbound with my wife, and now we're helping founders, mostly e-commerce founders, but we work with agency owners and various different founders to help them headhunt very specific high-level talent in the Philippines. So that's in a nutshell.
That's a good part. I don't know why you don't like it, but I do like that uniqueness that you mentioned. I definitely will come back to that. But let's just go through this because there is a lot of companies try offshore hiring and give up very, very quickly. So, what usually goes wrong, in your opinion?
Yeah. So, I mean, a few things, but I would say the main thing, the main area where most businesses go wrong, it doesn't matter if you're a big company or a small company, most businesses will do it wrong, is that we're all attracting talent or trying to hire talent in more or less the same way. We write up a boring job description that no one wants to read, and then we publish it onto all the job boards where the only talent that goes on these job boards, or the majority of the talent that goes on these job boards, are job hopping and essentially freelance freelance people. And I guess what the businesses are looking for are maybe more career professionals and people who have strong experience in a particular field or in a particular like skill set, etc. And what they end up with are freelancers who are transient in nature and are not, let's say, committed to this role because they might be working 2 or 3 other jobs at the same time as a result of the transient nature of the work or of the engagements. So they end up hiring these people, realize this is not what we were looking for, or they go through the process and they find all these applicants who apply for the role, and they realize that none of these people are what we were looking for. If they do make a hire, then they'll usually replace that person within 90 days, maybe even sooner, and then come away with an opinion that the Philippines is just not a great place to hire people. And yeah, that's usually the chain of events.
So when people go to those freelance markets like Upwork and online jobs, and they are disappointed by their hires, why do you think is that? It's just because they're only meant to be for freelancers, not for people looking for full-time jobs?
Um, I'd say the issue that we're seeing is that the people who are on those platforms are the ones who tend to be always looking for work. And even when I've used these platforms myself, I have tended to see the same profiles and resumes being kind of circulating. And you see even when you review someone's resume, you can see the companies that they've been to, and you know that okay, you understand how these guys have found this particular person. So um, if you go on these platforms, you're typically going to see these same profiles over and over and over. And the Philippines is is split up into two kind of, I guess, two sides, right? You've got this freelancer community, which in the Philippines, the people who are working in local jobs, they look down on this. So this is like junior people, you know. And then you've got the people who are working in jobs, and they may be working for an American company, they may be working for a local company, but they're more settled and I guess more professional. This community over here, freelancers, this type of freelancership is not so professional. You know, they're more like, again, like they're more juniors, and they haven't held a job for a really long time. They haven't done their internships. They haven't done the things that you would usually do in order to get to a position where you're more settled in your career and you're more committed to a particular job. So most of the hiring is being done from this pool here, and arguably that is the easiest talent to reach. And you can find really good talent there, especially for roles like customer service representatives and general admin, VAs, etc. But if you want to hire people who are maybe have higher skills or more specific skills, you have to go looking for them more specifically, because they're not going to be here. This is where you go if you're constantly looking for work. If you're already working, you don't go there, So that's
Wow. I didn't know about that direct distinction. So there are professional people working for the other companies that you can still approach them. And there are freelancers that looking for jobs, and the idea is not to approach them because they're not the strongest talent.
Yeah, well, I don't want to discourage anyone from hiring from that pool, because it's
Yeah.
courses for courses. But if you are hiring from this pool, just keep in mind that this is the level of talent that you're going to be exposed to, and this goes also for if you're hiring through a general recruiter in the Philippines. As if you're hiring through a BPO in the Philippines, they're all using the same methods. This is why it's so hard to find this level of talent.
So would you say that ideally to find the unique talent, people should not go to directly to Philippines and just hiring people that operate within Philippines?
Sorry, can you rephrase the question?
The so if when people want to hire someone, whom do they reach out to? Do they reach out to the hiring agency based in Philippines, or do they reach out to the agency outside of Philippines, like yourself, for example?
Yeah, I guess so. For me, it doesn't matter who you reach out to. What matters is the methodology that the hirer or that you yourself are using to find talent. Because if you reach out to a Philippine-based BPO agency or a Australian BPO agency hiring in the Philippines, and they're using the same method, which is essentially write a boring job description, post it to onlinejobs.ph or Upwork or etc., you're still only accessing that limited talent pool. And again, you can find good people. You can. It's just that it's like 1 in a million. So it's a much harder place to find talent. Versus if you go, what we've been doing, and we only discovered this because I was building my own team, and I was really frustrated by the level of talent that I was finding through working with recruiters, working with BPOs, and hiring directly through onlinejobs.ph and Upwork, et cetera, et cetera. It was really, really frustrating. Like, why is everyone a junior? And then so the alternative being a more direct approach. In our case, we use headhunting, or what's also described as executive search. Like if you're looking for a new CEO or a CMO or something like this, you would use a headhunter, right? You wouldn't typically use that for a media buyer or a creative strategist or something like this. But because in the Philippines, because of the way that the market is structured like this, the workforce is structured like this, that method just doesn't work. But it works great in Australia. You post a job to seek, you find great people. It's just not how it works in the Philippines for some reason.
Yeah, I think it shifts here as well. That's why many people spend, including headhunters, a lot of time on LinkedIn connecting with people and connecting with people who know other people and then ask for their references. So I think it just becomes more humanized as well. But I'm hearing that you're very good at writing very creative position descriptions. Sounds like it. I would love to see one of them.
Yeah, well, I can share one on like LinkedIn. I've been thinking about it, just wasn't sure if anyone would be interested in reading it. But it's just like, if you think about what is a job description, most people think, oh, this job description is a professional document. You know, you have to outline the requirements of the, you know, and that's what most people think. But to me, a job description is an advert. You know, how do I attract the best people? I have to put out a job description, an offer that looks attractive, that represents this company, not as the most professional company in all of LinkedIn, or yeah, but like a company that you might actually want to work for. So it's a little bit like, I don't know, it's marketing. You know, it's like you're writing marketing copy. And what is marketing copy? Was marketing copy is if I want to hire, if I want to market something to you, my first job would be to try to understand you. What are you looking for, et cetera, et cetera. And if this, so flipping it into headhunting, if I want to hire someone like you, say I'm this company here and we have these, we have a very specific company culture, I need to make sure that company culture and the values are embedded into the job description. But simultaneously, I don't want to talk about, like, a lot of job descriptions, they go straight into all the boring stuff. Like, here are the requirements. You need to meet these. If you're responsible for all this stuff. And a lot of people just look at it and go, oh, that's scary. Or whereas what we try to do is we try to share it as much about the company, can overshare, but try to share as much about the company and the mission and what they stand for and the values, and what are the benefits that you're going to receive of working with this company, and like all the perks and stuff. Just front load all the good stuff and leave all the boring shit to the end.
This is very well put. I think you absolutely should share at least one position description. We should put it out after this chat because it's really interesting. It sets the benchmark. It's good to see what is actually working. The whole thing and the whole idea about behind Spotlight Fridays is just to be as real as possible and as practical and pragmatic as possible, because no one needs fluffy stuff. Everyone can just read things, and that's why we're going live completely unscripted. And I don't even know what we're going to talk about it.
Oh no.
Okay, so for a retail or e-commerce brand, this seem to be your niche. Which roles are best suited for offshore talent today?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I don't know if there's any one particular role, and I think that the fault of, I guess, the problem that we've had is that as in the Western world, we've been hiring from this pool here, right? So it's given us this, this freelancer pool. So it's given us this impression of what a Philippine hire is capable of. And so people come away and they think, oh, Philippine hires, they're not very confident, or they're not very strategic. They're not very good at strategic thinking, or they're not very creative, or they're not very reliable, or they come away with all these impressions. And honestly, a lot of it's true, because look where they're hiring. But once you start hiring over in this pool over here, and like, everything changes, your perception changes. So for a lot of our clients, we start with hiring for roles that are more tactical in nature, like video editors and creative strategists and media buyers, because most of our clients are e-commerce brands. They want to scale media buying and bring control of media buying in-house. But once we've filled those key roles, and they see that the level of strategic thinking that's going on and stuff like this, then they start to think that, okay, well, maybe could you hire also a operations manager? Sure. So we hire an operations manager. Okay, well, how far can we push this? Can you hire a head of marketing for my e-commerce brand? Sure. Yeah. So we end up hiring the entire C-suite within these small e-commerce brands. And when I say small, we're talking maybe anywhere from 20 to 100 million in annual turnover, usually US dollars, because a lot of our clients are in USD. So by no means are these roles like tactical or purely tactical. These are leadership roles. So they can basically, in a nutshell, the Philippine talent that we've been able to uncover are able to fill any level within the company. I maybe wouldn't hand over the keys to the kingdom and hire a CEO straight off the bat, but yeah, VP of marketing, like anything like this, no problems. But most people will stick to these like tactical roles for sure.
This is such a brilliant insight, and thank you for that. And I have so many thoughts going through my head as you were saying that, because I think, and you would appreciate it because you've traveled a lot as well. I think we need to, I can see that these hires do not happen overnight, because I think to expand into different roles and hire more and more people, I think you need to build trust first, and
Yeah,
which happens over time.
yeah,
And I think what needs to happen within that space of time, well, we need to appreciate a bit of a velocity there and see that we need to learn more about different cultures and don't apply what we think and what we know necessarily to the external world
mm,
and think that it must align immediately and has to match to our world, because it doesn't work like this.
mm,
I moved from originally from Ukraine many years ago. I know that you and your wife moved from Estonia, where you were based for some time, and before that you were in Melbourne. So you moved a fair bit, and I think you will appreciate that, because I'm sure that when you lived in Estonia, which is a very different country, and which I know very well because it used to be part of the USSR, as you know, one of many republics, although they resented it for a good reason. But we're not going to go into the history lane. But you probably heard many people could still speak Russian there as well.
yeah,
But you would have to adapt to those cultural differences, and in order to have a fulfilled life, life
yeah.
in.
For sure, yeah, you have to adopt to, like, if you're hiring in like India or something, and I built a team in India in my first company, the one that went pear shaped, and if you're building a team over there, you have to understand that certain parts of that region, like Bangladesh as well, certain parts of that region, if you ask someone, "Can you do this?" they will tell you yes, even if they can't. And you see, like, these cultural nuances, you have to understand them. So building a team in the Philippines, I know that a lot of the Asian cultures, there's a hierarchy, and they're very respectful towards the authority in the hierarchy. And so I know that. I've been working with them for a very long time, so I know that. So I won't. So I know what to be careful with, and I know how to work with that, and actually work it to my favor. Not that I'm trying to make people do more than they should, but there are many wonderful aspects to having people who are not answering back every time you ask for something, and which is something that you would find in the US or in Australia. Even is if you ask someone, "Can you please do this?" they'll give you 10 reasons why they can't, for example. So that's a cultural thing, but in Australia we know that it's like, okay, we're comfortable with this, but you just have to learn to become comfortable with the cultural nuances.
How long did it take you to learn that about Filipino culture? Does it take a long time? I mean, I know that the loveliest people.
Yeah, they're super nice. Yeah, but they can be also, there's also not nice people, but in general the culture is that they're very nice, and I think that they're very respectful towards white people as well, and that's part of the culture, is that they look up to white people, which is maybe not, yeah, it's not how it should be, but it is the way it is. Um, I took me years, because I think when I came into this, and I've been building teams overseas, for remote teams, for maybe 15 years or something. So when I came into it, I was very young, and not hadn't been exposed to many different cultures, certainly not in the workplace, and so I didn't really understand that, and so I was judging them on the basis of my own culture, and banging my head up against a brick wall. And it was only once I think it was after my first company fell over, and I started to look at myself more critically and realizing that I'm not all of that. Um, that I started to become maybe a little bit more trying to be more empathetical to their culture, trying to understand them. So I would say maybe 6 or 7 years.
Wow.
Just a quick
And
6 or 7 years.
Logan, empathy is such a beautiful word, I think, to use it. And just over 30 years ago, I made a decision subconsciously that I will assimilate in this country. And I didn't bring, that background of what I did in Ukraine and how I lived and the language that I spoke. And I thought, well, this is the ground zero. We'll start. This is today's day one, and we'll park everything else for another day. And whatever I do, I just need to learn the language to begin with and then understand what the hell is going on here, because I felt like someone put me upside down. And it took me many years, by the way, and I'm not natural in languages. I still can't speak properly, but it's I appreciate that it does take a long time, but having patience for it, and everyone being wonderful and very accepting and very helpful as well. People respond to that very well. But what I also see doesn't work very well when people still their mindset is still in the country where they came from, and they're trying to create a very different life in a
Yeah,
different environment, and it's just there is a yeah, it's a massive friction, it's a massive disconnect, and it takes forever or never.
yeah,
They're never happy. But speaking of mindsets, so what's the biggest mindset shift that leaders need to make when building global teams, you think?
yeah, yeah. Good question. So I would say that it's probably going to be a very unpopular opinion, but I would say that if you want to hire really good people um, all around the world, I think you have to start with the question, what do they want? Rather than what we want is we want a 30% or 70% cost cutting in whatever it is. I think you have to start with what do they want, and I don't think that's necessarily just for um, overseas talent either. I think that goes for just talent in general. And so, say if you're hiring in the Philippines, and I'll use that as an example. If you're hiring in the Philippines, it's really important to know what they want, because if you don't know what they want and you go out to market, you're not going to attract the best people. Even if you use the best methods, or if you use headhunting or something like this, you're not going to attract the right people, because they'll see the offer and they'll think that's not what I want. And so, for example, if you're hiring for people to come and work in office in the Philippines, you're fighting an uphill battle, because if someone is living, even if they're living in the same city as your office, they might have to travel for an hour. Or let's say if I go from one part of Manila to the next part of Manila, it might take me 2 hours to get there by bus or public transport or something. 2 hours is a long time to travel, and I've got to travel home again. So a lot of the best talent, they think, okay, well, I've got the skills now, I've got the resume, I'm just going to wait for the right offer. And so they're just sitting around waiting for a work from home situation. And that's by and large what people want. In addition to that, they'll want things like you'll sweeten the deal if you incorporate things like 13th month pay, which is like a Christmas bonus. They're very popular in Asia. um, Health insurance. A lot of the time, if you're hiring contractors, you can't offer health insurance directly. If you're working through a EOR, an employer of register, or a business process outsourcing company who has an EOR, you'll pay out of your pocket for it, but they'll incorporate the health insurance. But what you can do is, if you're working directly with contractors, is you employ them basically as an employee, but you build a lot of these offers into the contract. So maybe they invoice you, but part of their invoice they might throw in an extra 50 or $100 or something for their own health insurance, and that's generous.
That's wonderful. So my biggest takeaway that you're writing very creative PDs, and also when building that offshore team, it is important to understand and maybe start with what it is that they want. and then align potentially to your own business objectives and what you want to achieve. This is very powerful because I never actually thought about it like this, but it's very good. It's a very good mindset to have. So this is very helpful. Logan, it's been a pleasure. I don't even know what happened to in the last 25 minutes. You definitely delivered very many insights within this conversation and very practical. And this is definitely not a popularity contest. So I appreciate the honesty and everything what you've shared. And I hope it was of interest to people who have joined us live or the ones who will be watching this episode. But it is truly very helpful. And I also would appreciate that people probably reach out to you directly and ask other questions if they're thinking about building the teams offshore, just because you spent years and years learning about the culture and you have your own unique approaches as well that deliver great results. So why would anyone want to waste years of their time? They'd rather double down on what it is that they're very good at. So I really appreciate your time. It's very generous, and I'm delighted that we finally managed to lock in this conversation. So thank you. And I'm certainly looking forward to meeting you and Mel in person. Thank you so much. And thanks for everyone who joined us live today. Have an amazing Friday.